What are those signals that you think can help fill the gap between board and C-suite to make sure they both are aligned? We are talking about setting up North Star.
Stop handing off your digital strategy to the IT department. If you are in the boardroom, you own the North Star. In this episode, Germain St-Denis, the architect of People First Framework, author of Empowering People Through Caring Leadership, and a veteran leadership strategist, joins us to break down the why and how of digital ownership at executive level. We are talking strategy, accountability, and the transformation of the modern leader. This is digital leadership in the boardroom. If you are sitting in the boardroom, C-suite, or working directly with the C-suite, this conversation is for you. Let's welcome Germain St-Denis. Hey, Germain. Thank you very much for joining today. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you very much for inviting me. That's terrific.
In some studies, I have seen like 79% of CMOs are having hard time to justify ROI on their digital investments. 85% of all initiatives, AI initiatives in particular, are failing. And majority of CEOs are not very confident about value of marketing. And all these data are coming from Gartner, McKinsey, Forrester level of reports. There is a big mismatch in understanding between boardrooms and executive authorities. Where do you see the differences? Where do you see the gap is in their roles, in their understandings? There are studies and talks about conflict of interest on different roles, decision making, defining strategy, metrics, and all those things. What do you see where the differences are, and how can those be filled?
I would say that the biggest issue is that those projects that you referred to and percentage of failures, and I pulled one out the other day from Deloitte, and I'll just read. 93% of the AI budget goes into technology. 7% goes into for the people expected to use it. So 93 to 7. It's Those projects are treated as IT or tech projects. When an executive sees something as a tech project, more often than not, even though I worked my entire career around emerging tech, more often than not, executives, the higher you go, they really don't want to get into it. And that's a disconnect. Immediately, that's a disconnect. If your top executives are supposed to set the direction, the North Star, basically, but a project goes ahead without his or her involvement, direct involvement, then you've got the problem. And I think the staff on the project also know that, even if it's a big project, they also know that. I'll give you an example. I worked for a large tech company. We had a huge contract with Pashtunagan provinces, and the executive sponsor would come once a month or so to some of the meetings. Problem was, each time he came, he gave us different direction because he wasn't following closely enough. And you can't do that, right? I mean, you just can't do that. There's a disconnect in alignment there. That's part of the execution part, but to avoid that, you really, really had to set the direction at the very beginning. Executives will only be able to justify the ROI, in my opinion, if they treat it as a business initiative, not a tech initiative. Does that make sense to you?
That's right. Even I also understand it in the same way as I mentioned, like 85% of all AI initiatives are failing, and you mentioned 93% of investment is going towards technology. Behind those 85% of initiatives failing, the reason is not technology, the reason is leadership. Okay. And there is you're mentioning like 7% investment is going towards people, the organization itself. That that supports the other argument also why those 85% initiatives are failing, because we are only relying technology to solve technical problems. We're more focused on looking at, we invest money on technology suddenly and magically it will solve our problems. We are delegating the responsibilities in the wrong way, or we are delegating wrong responsibilities to the wrong people.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And that responsibility of change leadership, which is different from change management, but that responsibility of change leadership has to start with the top executive. He or she can delegate the execution possibly, but they still have to be close to it. But the whole initial part. And so one of my former clients, a very smart woman, an executive in finance in Toronto, we were discussing this issue. And she came up with this terrific phrase that I've been using ever since. And I don't think own it, but anyway, she calls it modeling from the top. It's really great. Executives have to model the behavior that they want their organizations to follow, right? And if they don't, if the executives are off somewhere else, doing something else, or they use different tools or only ask for reports, that's not going to inspire a whole team to say, hey, we're going to start this whole new marketing initiative or a new GI initiative. It doesn't really matter what the initiative is so much, but it's that leadership from the top has got to be visible, very clear, visible, engaged. I would also add, if it's not on the scoreboard at the executive meetings or even at the board level, if it's not an item, then it's not a priority, right? So if they want them to succeed, keep them visible, bring them up in board meetings, provide some feedback, and maybe get some questions, right?
The whole point of board is to become the North Star of the organization, define strategy, stay in touch with executive authorities, guide them to set and prioritize the goals right, okay, and invest in the right place. Variety of board makes sense too. Sometimes there is a lack of enough knowledge in the boardroom as well for some person, okay, for some role. How to identify if there are gaps even in that perspective, like, okay, executive team is strong, but the boardroom have gaps in their knowledge or their vision. How to determine that, how to identify that? Because if you're saying like it should come from the top and board should model the change, then like who who is responsible to spot those holes even in the board team?
Well, I think, and I haven't run into this problem, but that's a good problem. If there's a gap, and I think the CEO probably becomes the the connection between, right, between what's going on in the organization and the board. I think that would be the CEO's responsibility. Or if it's a COO, that's the lead sponsor. But even if the board is not technical, usually there are ways to be able to explain, since it's a business initiative, and the board would
That's right.
understand all the business reasons. They don't need to understand much of the technology. Okay, today they hear about AI. They don't need to know much about that, but they need to know what is the business problem that they're trying to solve, right? Or business opportunities that they're trying to take advantage of. And I think if there's a gap, that's how I think it has to be filled, or potentially find another board member, even if it's somebody coming from another company, to say, okay, you sit on this board and help us provide guidance, this new initiative.
Many CEOs are not very confident about the value or existence of CMOs, okay. On the other side, I'm also seeing more fractional roles are becoming popular. Many organizations are hiring fractional CMOs, fractional CIOs, and as such, there are a lot of C-suite roles becoming fractional, part-time, or very subject matter expert for certain programs or things like that. Do you see the future of C-suite is changing as well with all this transformation?
Most definitely, and not just at the CMO level. Um, Fractional roles have become more common, and I think they kind of started a bit more maybe around the pandemic. I've started to see it. A guy named Michael Leckey, he's a former CHRO at Cartman Group and at Bloomberg, and he wrote a book about um, leading change and transformation through human capability. And so he also talked about fractional roles in the sense that if an executive really is not comfortable trying to lead a big initiative, they can hire someone as a transformational executive, right? So it's not to replace them. It's only to be kind of their right arm during that transformation. And part of that justification would have to be that, of course, all the expenditures in marketing for CMO, for example, they have to bring benefits. So, but then the question is, how do you define, is it more revenue? Are you growing revenue? Are you growing market share? Um, you know marketing a lot more than I do, but we know that marketing works. And I have former colleagues in marketing, and never question their thinking. We know marketing works. It's just a question of, again, if you don't start with the business approach, you won't see the justification for the ROI because it's not going to be there from the technical results.
The way marketing is also changing, it's complicated. Just recently, couple days ago, like, not sure if you heard, Book, a new platform is launched, social media platform is launched, which is totally between agents. Humans can only log in to see what's going on, how agents are interacting with each other, but it's agent to agent network. Okay, means like you can have your agent deployed in the social media and represent you, but you cannot represent yourself there. It's really boosting a new marketing category, agent to agent marketing. Okay, what does it tell us? That marketing strategy has to be rebooted now, and who's responsible for that? CEO, board, or a CMO? Okay, and CMO who's non-digital savvy, how will they define the strategy for the segment like this? I'm not saying like CMO role is not responsible or not valid anymore, but CMOs also have to rediscover themselves in this new world that we are heading into in 2026. What is your opinion on the readiness of such changes? Is it like board again, like we are coming back to the gaps in the boardroom over and over? Board needs to understand all these situations, not just at the beginning of the fiscal year, whatever goals were set on the profit and loss statement, and then keep holding the executives responsible and accountable for meeting those or not, because the world is changing during the fiscal year. A lot has been changing, and the goals have to relook as well, and make them understand, and redefine KPIs, programs, priorities, and if need be, the team structure.
In terms of us, I haven't worked in marketing now, so that from a CMO point of view, I don't know exactly, but it would be similar. CSO. Um, the world is changing for everybody,
Yeah.
and it's changing very fast. So the speed of change and innovation, I think, is what makes everything so difficult. Um, because you can't measure the same things. You can't let projects take 2 years. It's too long, right? You've got to be very, very short term, different methodologies, obviously. Um, and the executive team, I think, have to realize if the CMO alone doesn't have the technical expertise, or if the whole executive team maybe doesn't have enough knowledge, then you've got to bring expertise from somewhere, right? Either the big five or individuals who do that kind of coaching. And I'm not trying to sell anybody on coaching, but if you don't have the expertise or you don't have a broad enough knowledge, bring someone else who does, and then that will help, right? And it will help explain how to go about it, how to define the business approach, and how to measure what are the key indicators or the success indicators that you would use afterward.
Success indicators, that's a good point. Let's hear more about it from you. There are signals, even like when the program is in progress, there are signals that responsibilities are done right. If motivation level is changing in the C suite, if there is quietness in the boardroom, okay, 80% of communication is nonverbal. what is your take? How to sense that happening and pick up the signal at the right time is important, and that's everyone's responsibility, not single person. Okay, what are those signals that you think can help fill the gap between board and C-suite to make sure the both are aligned? We are talking about setting up North Star for the organization, and we also talk about uh, leaders have to model the change. But what kind of signals that you think are important to keep an eye open for?
First of all, the way to detect signals, I'll go back to a leadership trait, which is emotional intelligence. When you're executive or um, any other levels of management, you have a sense of how people are reacting to what you're saying or what you're asking. And on an executive team within the company, not the board, executives can tell who's really behind them or not. Um, Number one, as you say, maybe they're quiet. They constantly question your approach. They may be a bit negative about expecting any of this to work because there's not enough of it, or they may want to wait. They may say, "Well, let's deal with this later as we have this other issue," or let's wait until other companies have more success with these new marketing AI-based initiatives and see how they can do.
Yeah, while we are waiting for other companies to succeed on some strategy means that you're not innovating. You're already falling behind.
There's another executive I dealt with often. He was tough, very tough to deal with, but he always said, if you don't know that the race is on, you've already lost.
That's a good one.
To wait and see what others are going to do is not going to help you. But on the other hand, to rush and do quick little technology projects just to say that you're in it, like you're in AI, for example. Oh, yes, we
Mm.
do AI in our companies, and we have a couple of people trying these few things with these chatbot marketing initiative, and I think maybe it is very smart. On the other hand, it's very dangerous, in my opinion, because all of these chatbots only repeat what they know from there and share the library, right?
Yeah.
So they can't learn anything new. They all repeat what they know. Where's the new stuff going to come from that normally comes from a person?
Yeah, no, I get your point. Like this is important to understand for everyone who's listening that technology has some limitations on the AI world that they only rely on the past information. Okay. Prediction based on the past data is what they do, the agents, or the guardrails that we define for them to limit their thinking. Otherwise, it may become very dangerous, and the freedom to make rogue decisions and experiment on their own can become tricky for business, for branding. Eventually, it's gonna happen, yeah, but we are not there yet. So, marketing strategy has to be very much done to be done responsibly. That is important. One bad move can ruin the brand.
Everything that you're doing has to be explainable, if you will. So if you use technology to simplify processes, everything else, that's great. As soon as you're going to use technology to make decisions, it has to be explainable. How they arrive at that decision has to be explainable. If you can't explain it, how do you know that they're making or recommending the right action?
So, Jamin, from your experience, what are those top three recommendations that you want to give to build strong relationship between the boardroom and C-suite executives for high performing organization?
Those are very key. That's a really powerful question. So, in my opinion, trust is number one. You have to have trust between the members, between the senior leadership team and the board members, and all across the board. As soon as somebody doesn't trust you,
Yes.
if you don't trust someone, well, why not? Is it a justified or not? But you don't know. But the world changes so fast. You have to be able to trust your colleagues and the higher ups. And I think number two is you need to develop a culture of collaboration. And even though I say that always say that in terms of leading teams or large teams. But even within the team and within the board members, there's got to be that spirit of collaboration. We're all in this together. How are we going to make this corporation better? How are we going to get ourselves ahead of our competitors? And when everybody agrees on that and on that purpose, right? Collaborate to achieve the goals. Very, very powerful. Hard to do anything without that. The third one is when you're about to make major decisions about your organization, and some of them impact your team tremendously. Sometimes it's layoffs, sometimes it's acquiring a company, and that may be part of the strategy. All of a sudden, they say, we're going to start using this technology across the board. The third one I would say is think about the impact on the people who are going to use this technology in your organization and in your customer's organization. What is the impact on them? What do they need to know in order to succeed and in order to make our corporation successful? What do they need to know?
So it's transparency and aligning for mutual growth.
Trust, transparency, alignment, collaboration. I mean, you can't really do much without that, I think.
That's wonderful. Great point, Germain. Thank you very much for your time today. I'm sure we have good values received from you today. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I appreciate having been invited on your show. You're doing great work. Keep it up.
Thank you.
And that's a wrap on this episode. We hope you are walking away with at least one battle-tested strategy you can apply to your own digital journey today. This show is built for leaders like you who are tired of the fluff and ready for real solutions. If you found value in this discussion today, please subscribe to the channel and leave us a review. It helps us bring more world-class leaders to the table. Also, feel free to share this episode with a colleague who is navigating these same digital trenches. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.